This episode is inspired by a conversation I had with a friend recently. He studied actuarial science at the university for 4 years, which involved advanced maths and statistics. After completing his mandatory national service program in 2022, you would expect him to be working in a bank or an insurance company by now. Instead, he's working in a local kiosk as a depot errands boy just to survive. As he was telling me about the countless applications he has sent out with no reply, it really hit me. And yet, his story isn't unique. It's the reality for thousands of young Ghanaians who finish school full of hope, but only to discover the job market has no place for them. But for us to get the full picture of the problem we are dealing with, I have split this special episode into 5 parts. First, we will look at how we got here, then the role of education in the equation, then the continuous evolving of the problem in political colors, how it's affecting all of us, and most importantly, what you all can do to help solve the problem. Now let's get into it. I want us to take a step back to really understand why unemployment is such a crisis in Ghana today. Because the truth is, it wasn't always like this. In fact, there was a time when getting a degree almost guaranteed you a job. So what happened? Right after independence in 1957, Ghana was buzzing with hope. The vision of Kwame Nkrumah was clear: build industries, create jobs, and make Ghana a shining example of African progress. And he didn't just talk, he built them. By the mid-60s, the country had about 50 state-owned enterprises, from the Tema Oil Refinery to the Aboso Glass Factory, the Jute Factory, the Commander Sugar Factory, the Zwarungu Meat Factory, and many more. The investments were visible for everybody to see. These factories didn't just produce goods, they produced thousands of jobs. At that time, if you finished school, you could easily find a spot in the civil service or in one of these factories. It was almost like a conveyor belt: education on one side, employment on the other. These industries, along with the civil service, absorbed thousands of school leavers and graduates. According to a World Bank report in 1977, Ghana's industrial sector employed over 10% of the labor force in the early 60s and increased to 16% in the early 70s. Considering the country had just gained independence, it was something that gave hope.
At long last, the battle has ended. Ghana, your beloved country, is free forever.
And I'm sure some of you watching have parents or grandparents who worked for some of these SOEs. Unfortunately, that optimism wasn't going to last. The dream started to crack in the late 70s and early 80s. By the late 70s, Ghana's economy was in deep crisis due to economic mismanagement, political instability, and a change in global political dynamics. Inflation soared above 100% by 1977, and factories that were once vibrant began to struggle. Then in 1983, Ghana signed on to the IMF and World Bank Structural Adjustment Program, also known as the Economic Recovery Program. Its major objectives were to boost agriculture, open Ghana to trade, making the essential consumer goods available, more foreign exchange in the country, lower the rate of inflation, rehabilitate the physical infrastructure, and to undertake studies to restructure economic institutions. It also aimed at trade liberalization, privatization of the industrial sector, and finally introducing government spending cuts. I know it sounds more technical, but in reality, it meant one thing: state factories were either shut down or sold. For instance, the Commander Sugar Factory struggled for years and eventually stopped production. The Aboso Glass Factory shut down. Achimota Brewery Limited was gone. African Timber and Plywood shut down. Gihol Electronics, Tema Food Complex Corporation, NIC vehicle assembly plants and many others were all sold or shut down. As a result of the conditions of the program, unemployment rose from about 10% in 1980 to 19% in 87 and to 21% in 93, with job losses affecting urban and educated citizens in particular. On top of this, many local private sector industries failed due to trade liberalization, which introduced competition from the rising Asian countries. In the private sector too, about 48,000 jobs were gone. Suddenly, the conveyor belt between the school and jobs snapped in half. Fast forward to the 90s and early 2000s, there was another shift. Ghana's economy started leaning heavily on services. That is banking, retail, telecom, and of course, government jobs. Now, a service-led economy isn't necessarily bad, but here's the problem. Services don't create as many large-scale jobs as industries do. You can open 100 bank branches or phone shops, but they will never employ many people as a single large garment factory. This imbalance means the economy is growing, but job creation for graduates and the youth in general is weak. The growth is not corresponding to the available young unemployed population. But it's not just the structure of the economy. Even the little private sector we have faces constant shocks that make job creation almost impossible. Here's where things get messy. The few businesses that try to hire get hit with problems again and again. Sometimes, these challenges are beyond the control of employers. We are talking about high inflation. When the cedi falls, import costs skyrocket, and the few already employed demand for high wages because their salaries lose value, which makes it expensive for companies to hire. Again, there is constant power crisis which forces companies to spend more on sustaining power than on employing new workers and training them. According to the Center for Global Development 2017 report, the country on average was losing $2.1 million in loss of production daily due to power cuts. Instead of expanding and hiring new graduates, employers will always play it safe. So to recap the first part, post-independence, the country was full of optimism for young graduates, but economic mismanagement and political instability led to the SAFs, the rise of a service-based economy, and constant uncertainties in the business environment. Now I'm sure you are starting to see the bigger picture. Ghana's graduate unemployment crisis didn't appear overnight. It's been building for decades. And this history sets the stage for our next big question. Even if we accept the background of the problem, why is our education system still failing to prepare graduates for the limited jobs we do have, and young graduates failing to adapt to the economic opportunities available? So now that we've cleared the history of how Ghana got here, let's talk about another big piece of the puzzle, which is education. Because while the past contributed to shape the job market we have today, the way we've continued to train our young people is also part of the problem. In Ghana, we've been built like robots to just memorize notes, produce correct answers during exam, pass and mostly forget what was taught. But the reality is that companies don't hire you to memorize or recite facts. They hire you to solve problems. They hire you to help them grow. And this is where the gap starts. An economics graduate may know the formula for compound interest by heart, but struggles to apply it in a real financial analysis. The Economic Forum report on the future of jobs in 2020 predicted that the top skills employers will be looking for globally in 2025 will be problem solving, critical thinking, and data literacy. And they were spot on with their prediction. Yet these are exactly the areas where Ghanaian graduates struggle most.
We realize that currently our system is set up for write an exam and pass, which isn't helping us to be able to fit into the labor market.
We need to do a gap analysis, right? Because things have changed so much, the industry keeps growing at such a fast pace that sometimes it doesn't exactly catch up to to what is being, what is being taught in the university.
So our situation is like teaching someone how to drive by only showing them road signs in a book. When they finally sit behind the wheel, they freeze. And that's exactly what is happening with too many graduates in Ghana. But this problem is made worse by where our students are going for higher education. Every year, more and more students flood into universities. Everyone wants a degree because society tells us it's the guaranteed path to success. Parents will sell land or borrow money with astronomical interest rates just to make sure their child goes to the university. As shown on the screen, tertiary students were a little over 500,000 in 2019, but for technical, vocational and that of higher national diploma, it stood at 76,770 and 50,386 respectively. And this data is from a 2022 Ghana Education Sector report. But here is the issue. While university numbers keep rising, TVET still lags far behind. Yet it's those technical and vocational skills, plumbing, welding, electricals, carpentry and ICT, that the job market desperately needs. In fact, the Ghana Statistical Service notes that youth unemployment is highest among university graduates compared to those with technical or vocational training. Why, you would ask? It's simple. Because the job market is flooded with degree holders chasing the same limited office jobs, while technical fields often struggle to find enough skilled workers. And the result of this imbalance is exactly what employers are complaining about. So I want to know in the comments, if you are advising a 16-year-old today, would you push them towards a university degree or a technical skill? Talk to any HR manager in Ghana and you will hear the same thing. Graduates may have certificates, but not the skills that companies actually need. Employers are looking for graduates with relevant digital skills, technical ability, productive communication skills, and problem-solving abilities. But too often, graduates show up with theory, but no or very limited practical training. Graduates in IT, for example, may know definitions of programming languages, but has never actually built a working project. According to research, digital skills are one of the biggest gaps. The World Bank's country director in 2021, Pierre Laporte, also said, quote, digital technologies could offer a source of productivity growth and accelerate firm upgrading and spur innovation and entrepreneurship, driving growth of higher quality jobs in Ghana. End of quote. Some companies now spend months retraining new employees, basically teaching them from scratch. That also costs money, and in tough economic times, many employers simply choose not to hire instead. And this mismatch leads to one of the biggest problems: graduate chasing jobs that don't even exist. In Ghana, most young people dream of a white-collar job, working in a bank, a government office, or a multinational company. But the truth is, these jobs are very limited. According to the Ghana Statistical Services Labor Force Report in 2019, 80% of Ghana's workforce is in the informal sector. These are traders, artisans, small businesses, street vending, and agriculture. That means only around 15 to 20% of jobs are in the formal sector, the white-collar space. So what happens is that we end up with thousands of graduates sending CVs to the same limited white-collar jobs, while the informal sector, which actually has room for growth and expansion, is ignored. It remains underdeveloped and unattractive to graduates, and this creates frustration, wasted potential, and yes, the ultimate, which is unemployment. So when you put all together, the theory-heavy education, the obsession with universities over technical training, graduates who leave school without job-ready skills, and thousands chasing the same limited white-collar opportunities, it's clear why our education system is failing the young graduates and the job market. And this brings us to another big question. If education is this mismatched, how have governments stepped in or failed to bridge the gap? When you talk about unemployment in Ghana, You can't ignore the role of government, because for decades, government has been at the center of how jobs are created and sometimes how they are destroyed. From Nkrumah to today, governments have also the dream of jobs. But at least for Nkrumah, he built over 50 state-owned enterprises which together employ tens of thousands of graduates and non-graduates. But after the 80s IMF structural adjustment programs, most collapsed or were sold. Since then, every civilian government, from Buzia to Limam, Rawlings to Kufuor, Mills to Mahama Part 1, Kufuor to Mahama Part 2 have promised to create jobs. But the data is cruel to all of them. As shown in the chart by the World Bank, you can see the trends with youth unemployment over the years by each government. Now let's be clear here. I'm not saying all these governments did nothing about the problem. But my concern is simple. If you look at the number of programs, initiatives, policies and money spent, as we are about to uncover in the video, and still we seem to get worse, you begin to ask questions and maybe conclude they did nothing to really solve it. The NDC under Rawlings introduced programs like PAMSCAD in the late 80s and 90s, which was meant to cushion Ghanaians from job losses as a result of the adjustment programs. Maslock and the National Youth Employment was then introduced under President Kufuor in 2006. The combination of President Mills and Mahama saw the introduction of the Local Enterprises and Skills Development Program, Youth Enterprise Support, which had 10 million cedi seed fund, JIDA and SADA, which millions were also spent. President Akufo-Addo continuing with same program models, but under different names. There was NAPCO, National Entrepreneurship and Innovation Program, which had a seed funding of 100 million, and of course, the flagship One District, One Factory initiative. I needed to stop the game at a point. The truth is, I began to lose track of all the numerous government youth employment programs during the Fourth Republic. As shown on the screen, we found lots of them, but for some strange reasons, none of them seem to work or solve the problem. And surely, we are going to have a couple under the Mahama Part 2, and that's the real issue. Government after government has treated unemployment like a political campaign promise, not a national emergency. Instead of building the strong industrialized economy that naturally creates jobs, they rely on temporary projects and protocols that fizzle out after a few years. The truth is, Ghana's business environment doesn't make it easy for companies to grow. And if companies can't grow, they can't hire. Let's take currency depreciation. Today the cedi might be 12 to the dollar, tomorrow 15. If you are importing raw materials, how do you plan? Then you add inflation, and suddenly the cost of production is too high to keep workers on payroll. Then there is energy crisis. The memory of doing so still haunts many businesses. Imagine running a factory where the lights go off unexpectedly. You can't afford to pay workers if you are spending thousands on diesel for generators. This is why many businesses stay small, cautious and informal. They avoid expanding because expansion means risk, and that risk trickles down as fewer jobs for graduates. Even for graduates who try to create their own businesses, the economic environment is hostile, and most of them quit within the first couple of months. So it's like trying to build a skyscraper on a shaky ground. You simply won't risk going too high if the foundation isn't stable. In Ghana, job opportunities often aren't about what you know, but who you know. Public sector recruitment is notorious for favoritism, political connections, family ties, or even bribes. This kills meritocracy. Imagine studying hard for years, sending out dozens of applications, only to watch someone with less qualification get the role because they know somebody. And this culture isn't limited to the public sector. In private companies too, recommendations and personal links can outweigh talent. Getting a recommendation for a job isn't a bad thing, but when it becomes the order of the day, then there is a problem. Now when you put all this together, the short-term job schemes, the half-fulfilled promises of job creation, the unstable business environment, and the cancer of whom you know culture, it's no surprise that unemployment keeps climbing. But what does this failure mean for the ordinary young graduates and young people in general? That's where you are heading next. So far, you've looked at how history, education, and governments have all contributed to Ghana's unemployment crisis. But let's bring it home, because this isn't just about policies and statistics. It's about people, real lives, real families, and the entire future of the country. For graduates, unemployment is more than a statistics. It's a personal crisis. Imagine spending years in school, graduating with pride, only to sit at home sending CV after CV with no response. According to a 2022 report, 19.7% of youth were unemployed. And beyond wasted skills, there is the emotional toll. A 2019 University of Ghana Psychology Department study shows that prolonged unemployment among youth is strongly linked to depression, anxiety, and low self-esteem. Another effect of this on individuals is underemployment. There are a lot of young graduates that the data will tell you are working, but in reality, they are underutilized, underpaid, unstable jobs, and no social protection. So basically, they are working for just the sake of keeping themselves busy. This means more and more young people are living and working below their potential. And when the individuals suffer like this, it doesn't stop with them. It ripples out to entire families. If you are watching this and you've been home after graduation for more than a year, please share your experience in the comments. In Ghana, families invest everything into education, like selling lands, loans, and even starving themselves to send their children to university, all in the hope of that one day their children will graduate and support them. But unemployment flips the script. Instead of graduates supporting families, many return home jobless, still depending on the very parents who sacrificed for them. And when graduates try to hustle, like riding boats, selling on Instagram, working in lotto kiosks like my friend, it often doesn't match the expectations families had when they paid university fees. This disappointment is real, even if it's unspoken, and this will also evolve into societies. One of the biggest ripple effects of unemployment and underemployment is migration. Young graduates who can't find jobs at home often look abroad. The International Organization for Migration report in 2021 said that Ghana is among the top African countries of origin for irregular migrants who attempt to get to Europe through the Sahara and Mediterranean Sea, and most are youth searching for work opportunities. Now add crime. High unemployment is always linked to rising cybercrime and petty theft, but the biggest impact of all is at the national level, because when the country's youth can't find work, the nation itself is in danger. Here is the big picture. Unemployment is not just a personal or family problem, it's a national economic risk. A statement from the UN Population Fund in 2023 said, over 57% of Ghana's population is under 25 years. That's a huge youth population as compared to other developed countries. Economists and demographers call this a demographic dividend. The implication is that if the youth are employed, they can power growth. But if they are unemployed, it becomes a demographic time bomb. A World Bank-led study warned that Ghana needs to create at least 300,000 new jobs every year just to keep up with the youth entering the labor market. Right now, we are not even close. And what does this mean? It results in slower GDP growth, more inequality, and rising frustration. And frustration can lead to political instability. Ghana may be stable today, but with half of its youth unemployed or underemployed, stability may not be guaranteed forever. When we talk about unemployment, it's not just numbers on a report. It's individuals feeling wasted, families carrying broken dreams, societies losing hope, and a nation gambling with its future. The big question now is, what can actually be done to change this story? Because clearly, the usual solutions aren't working. So the picture obviously looks bleak. But here is the thing. Unemployment in Ghana is not an unsolvable problem. Other countries have faced similar crises and they are turning things around. The question is, what can Ghana actually do to change this story? 1. Rethinking education and skills development. The first step, I believe, is education. We can't keep training graduates for jobs that don't exist. Imagine if SHS student left school knowing how to fix solar panels, repair phones, or run a small online shop. And university students had to do internships every year, not just sit in lecture halls until national service. The launch of TVET service in 2021 was a step in the right direction, but enrollment is still less than students at the secondary level. Compared to that with countries like Germany, where nearly 50% of students pursue vocational training, and you see why their unemployment is far lower. As a country, we need to teach skills people can actually use to be very competitive in the job market. Think of Swami Magazine in Kumasi. For years, artisans there have trained apprentices without a single government curriculum. Yet they produce mechanics, welders, and fabricators who keep Ghana moving.
Some magazine has about 12,000 small-scale businesses and 200,000 artisans. And on the revenue side, if everyone is making $5 a day, you have $1 million of transaction going on within the cluster. And for us, the informal sector.
Yes. There are estimated 250,000 people who make their living off of working on car body parts and everything you can think about when it comes to machines. Today we're talking to...
If government partnered with them and formalized that training, we would produce thousands of job-ready youths every year. 2. Balancing tertiary enrollment. One tough but necessary conversation Ghana needs to have is about what we teach at our universities and how many students we admit into each program. Right now, if you walk onto a university campus in Ghana, you will find lecture halls packed with thousands of students studying sociology, political science, psychology, or economics. These are no doubt important fields, but the problem is, our job markets can't absorb them all, and even our economic landscape isn't built for such fields. Meanwhile, industries that desperately need skilled workers, like engineering, computer science, agriculture, or technical trades, have fewer intake and sometimes outdated facilities. The imbalance is clear. We are producing graduates in fields with fewer job opportunities, while leaving the skills gap in critical sectors wide open. So what's the solution? Ghana needs to rethink tertiary enrollment policies. Universities should gradually restrict intake into oversaturated programs like general social sciences and humanities, and instead expand opportunities in skill-based job-ready fields. This doesn't mean scrapping the arts or humanities. They are still valuable for society, but it means shifting the numbers. This kind of policy has worked elsewhere. Countries like Singapore deliberately guided students' enrollment towards engineering and applied sciences when they needed to industrialize. Today, they are a global hub for technology and innovation. Ghana can take inspiration from that. And this isn't just about government and admission boards. It's also about mindset. Parents and students need to understand that a degree in mechanical engineering or agribusiness might open more doors than another crowded political science class. If you were 18 today, fresh out of SHS, which program would you choose? Something practical like IT or engineering, or one of the traditional social sciences? So restricting intake into some field isn't punishment. It's about balance. It's about making sure Ghana trains more young people in the skills that match our economy, instead of filling lecture halls with degrees that end up collecting dust. 3. Creating entrepreneurship hubs. When you look at Ghana's unemployment crisis, one thing becomes clear. Most of the people creating the most jobs are not your usual government officials or big men with fat contracts. It's the people in the informal sector. But here is the problem. These people are building with little to no support. Now let's be honest. If Ghana is serious about solving unemployment, we need to create a strong ecosystem that actually fuels entrepreneurship. Think about Silicon Valley. For decades, it has been a hotspot for tech geniuses building companies out of garages. There is deliberate backing by governments, venture capital firms, angel investors, and special banks pumping money into young ideas. That's how you end up having Apple, Google, and Facebook. And even though the Silicon Valley Bank collapsed eventually, their model worked for a very long time. Take risk on youth and their ideas, because even if nine fail, one success can change an economy. And we still have such similar banks available pumping money into young entrepreneurs and their ideas. So what does that look in Ghana? First, let's look at venture capital and angel investing. You already have some seeds planted. The Ghana Venture Capital Trust Fund was set up to channel money into SMEs. There are groups like Impact Hub Accra, Best Africa, and InnoHub that act as incubators, training young entrepreneurs and sometimes connecting them to funding. We even have some equity firms like Oasis Capital and Wangara Green Ventures, investing in startups in agribusiness, renewable energy, and fintech. But here is the truth. Most young people and graduates on the street don't even know these programs exist. And those who apply often find the process intimidating or out of reach. We could also have a Shark Tank-like program on one of our national TV stations, where young innovators and entrepreneurs pitch ideas to real investors who are ready to back them. So basically, what I'm saying is, if you support young graduate entrepreneurs with same seriousness we give to big men, you will create more jobs and make the country industrialized than any government payroll can handle. If Ghana had its own Shark Tank today, what business idea would you pitch? A farm, a fashion brand, or a tech app? Let us know in the comment section. 4. Apprenticeships as a pathway to jobs and entrepreneurship. One of the biggest myths among young graduates in Ghana is that apprenticeship is beneath them. After spending years in the university, wearing graduation gowns, many believe picking up a trade or technical skill is a step backwards. But here's the truth. Apprenticeships might be one of the smartest ways to turn unemployment into opportunities. Think about it. Ghana's job market has never been ready for white-collar jobs. But areas like fashion, welding, carpentry, catering, and digital skills keep expanding. These are the very areas where apprenticeship thrive. Across the country, master craftsmen and women are training thousands of young people in workshops, saloons, and mechanic shops. The difference is, most of those apprentices are SHS leavers and not tertiary graduates.
Nora Bannerman Abbott started her fashion company in 1980, 35 years ago. Fads may come and go, but Bannerman Abbott has found that finding skilled workers to make patterns, cut cloth, and sew garments is a trend that hasn't gone out of style. And although she's made the contacts that have kept her business growing, she's struggled to meet the demand. Until now.
We came into contact with a major buyer with huge orders for 200,000 pieces of polo shirts per month. And we realized that Slee Garments Export Limited did not have the capacity at the time to produce that. We didn't have sufficient skilled workers, so we approached the Skills Development Fund.
Supported it.
But why can't a graduate join too? In fact, when a graduate with problem-solving and communication skills combines that with hands-on technical training, they become more employable and even more likely to start their own business.
I have a BSc first degree in banking and finance.
Apprenticeships are not just about learning a skill. They are about getting the exposure to how businesses actually run day to day. And that practical knowledge is exactly what many graduates are missing. So instead of waiting endlessly for office jobs, apprenticeship could be the bridge between graduation and financial independence. Because sometimes, the best way forward is to get your hands a little dirty while building something for yourself. 5. Redefining what a good job means. In Ghana, we've been made to believe that a good job means sitting in an office with AC and wearing a tie. And let's be honest, those jobs are few. Some young graduates feel they are superior to certain jobs. And others have also created their own version of white-collar jobs in their minds that do not exist. We need to start respecting artisans, traders, and young struggling entrepreneurs. Because the fact is, A plumber or mason who earns 3,000 cedis a month is doing better than a graduate who is still at home waiting for a government posting. 6. Government creating the right environment. Finally, government's role isn't just to hire everyone. It is to create an environment where young people can thrive. That means cutting down bureaucracy so businesses get to be more efficient, stable electricity, clear rules that don't change every election year, and channel support to the right source. So if you ask what can be done, the truth is, we don't need magic. We need practical steps. Make education useful, reshaping enrollment policies, deliberate support for young entrepreneurs, graduate apprenticeship, respect all kinds of work, and fix the environment for business. Because at the end of the day, Ghana's unemployment problem won't be solved by big speeches or promises. It will be solved by empowering ordinary people with real opportunities to create and sustain work. Unemployment in Ghana isn't just a numbers problem. It's my friend with a degree in natural science sitting in a lotto kiosk. It's a young graduate selling on the roadside, or the brilliant IT student driving a boat. This is the harsh truth. Our young people are ready, but the system isn't ready for them. And if nothing changes, Ghana risks wasting its greatest resource, and that's the youth. So maybe the question isn't just when will government create jobs. Maybe it's also about what role can we play in changing how we see work, education and opportunity in this country. Because one thing is clear, if Ghana is going to rise, it will rise on the shoulders of its youth. The only question left is, will we give them the chance? Thanks so much for watching this episode to the end. We really appreciate your time. If you enjoyed this one, please like and subscribe to the channel for more stories on social issues that need attention, business and entrepreneurship from Ghana and Africa. This has been Abe Graham, and I'll see you in the next one.